Distinguished delegates and ladies and gentlemen, we have quorum and it's 9 a.m., so we'd like to start the session. It would be appreciated if you could please take your seats. Please take your seats. We're starting the session.
All right, we're going to start the session because we have quorum, so I really urge you to take your seats. And I'll turn to the Secretariat for some housekeeping announcements.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have a lot of housekeeping announcements today, but one important one. As you know, we are a bit tight on time. Due to the time constraints, the Chair may, at the end of this morning, suggest changes in the order of the working program that may start from this afternoon. So please pay attention. By the end of this morning, the Chair may make some suggestions on the changes in the order of the working program. Thank you.
I'd like to give the floor to the CITES Secretary General for an announcement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear delegates, colleagues, and friends, today we have the rare privilege of celebrating a true pioneer of CITES, Mr. Jacques Bernet, who today turns 90. Jacques, your journey with CITES began at its very foundation. From serving as its first executive secretary to dedicating 23 years to shaping and strengthening this vital convention, your contributions have left an enduring mark on global conservation. You were there at the beginning, navigating uncharted waters with wisdom, dedication, and a deep commitment to wildlife protection. And now, at the young age of 90, you still join us to impart your wisdom to the younger generations. Your leadership, especially in times of transition, has helped make CITES the strong institution it is today. Your legacy is not just written in the history of this convention, but lives on in the work we continue together. On behalf of all of us here today, we extend our deepest gratitude and warmest wishes on this milestone birthday, celebrating your 5th decade with CITES. Happy 90th, Jacques. May your legacy continue to inspire generations to come. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jacques. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe 2 words from Mr. Bernet. 2 words, Jacques.
One word may be enough. Thank you. But in English it's 2 words, but in French it's not. With merci.
Thank you. Well, I don't know, but if you give me a minute, let me express one wish, and that is that the COP and the parties take the time to discuss the COP rules of procedure on Article 25(6), which gives rise to long discussions and problems, and it still has not been solved. Unfortunately, the text dates back to COP 8, which was a while back. A mistake was made. I was part of the Secretariat at the time, and that was part of my responsibilities, which is why I have to confess that it's partly my mistake. The problem is that instead of talking about amendments to the CITES appendices, we talk about proposals to amend the appendices, and this leads to great difficulties. I've tried to deal with this by talking to the working group on the rules of procedure, but so far this has not been taken on board. Now, I do realize that that is not an issue that comes within that group's mandate. I have taken the time to talk to some of the members of that group today. In fact, I was just discussing it with a delegate from China. I do think that the text could be greatly simplified, and we should talk about what we want to do and talk about amendments to the appendices, or amendments proposed rather than proposals to amend, because if you have proposals, that could involve several amendments, and that can make life very difficult indeed. So it seems to me that, but in any case, thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And with that, we begin today in advance. If I have to be curt and cut people off, I do apologize now. I am just trying to make sure we get through all of our agenda, and we are a half a day behind. And so I asked you to speak concisely, clearly, and within 2 minutes. So I would like to begin with agenda item document 34.3, the implementation of the recommendations of the Plants Committee, and I will turn to the Secretariat to introduce this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The document updates on the Plants Committee's recommendations under the RST process. Section 1, on the implementation of the recommendation, covers the reports on 8 flora species country combinations, with the progress detailed further in Annex 1. We note that consultations with the Plants Committee remain ongoing and are almost done with their conclusions. And this is the case for Congo and Pericopsis celata, Malaysia, Aquilaria malacensis, Mozambique, Dalbergia melanoxylon, and the United Republic of Tanzania, also for Dalbergia melanoxylon. This will require some revisions to the recommendations in paragraph 19 to retain relevant RST recommendations until the Secretariat can provide an update at the next meeting of the Standing Committee, SC79. The second section of the document addresses matters beyond Article 4, including a recommendation for Mozambique and Dalbergia melanoxylon, and updates on Vietnam and Aquilaria crasna, where stricter domestic measures and a zero export quota are pending national legislation adopted. As already reported to the committee earlier this week under item SC 78 Doc 33.10 on the implementation of Article 13 in Vietnam. So pending these minor revisions to reflect ongoing consultations of the Plans Committee on the 4 cases that I have mentioned before, the Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendations in paragraphs 19 and 20 of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor to standing committee members or parties that are affected by these RST recommendations. If they wish to speak, I'll turn to them first. I have Mozambique.
Good morning and thank you, Madam Chair. Mozambique is really concerned about what has been proposed by the Secretariat. Since, according to their recommendations, we have met all the requirements that have been requested for us by providing all the scientific information that is needed to come out with a conservative and interim quota so that we cannot sustain a zero export as it is happening now. So we do not agree. We don't see any grounds to still continue in having this zero export quota because we have met all the requirements and even the deadlines, providing all the scientific information that was significantly a reduction of the present quota by over 60% less. So we would like to have our quota of our conservative quota published by Secretariat. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Mozambique. I believe the Secretariat explained, according to the resolution for the RST, the Plans Committee is still in consultation on several of these cases and will conclude by the information will be provided. That review will be done in time for SC 79. So I have Tanzania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania thanks the Secretariat for great efforts of reviewing documents submitted to respond on recommendations on the 2 species under the review of trade, which are Dalbergia manoxolon and the Oceris lanceolata. We sincerely thank the Secretariat for recommending removing the Oceris lanceolata from RST process based on the supporting documents we submitted. We would like also to inform the current meeting that we have established a zero export quota of Oceris lanceolata from the United Republic of Tanzania. Madam Chair, with regards to RST recommendations on Dalbergia manoxolon, which has recommendations A to D, we have implemented the recommendations A to C, which we have short-term items, and then submitted the report to the Secretariat for considerations. Thus, recommendation D is remaining ongoing. We request the current meeting to take note on the progress made by the United Republic of Tanzania. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have the DRC.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the light of the explanation just given by Mozambique, the Central African Group supports Mozambique's proposal. We would like the Standing Committee to ask the Plants Committee to please publish the quota as requested. Thank you, Madam.
I will open up to Standing Committee members now. I have Poland.
Thank you, Chair. I have remarks to one combination, Aquilaria malacensis from Indonesia. We note that recommendations A and B of the Plants Committee have been formally implemented and agree that recommendation C remains ongoing. However, even though a new NDF has been submitted and a reduced quota for wild source specimens has been published, this quota appears to rely mainly on fragmented data from the literature and unpublished survey data from quite small sampling areas that is not provided in the NDF. From this point of view, and with regard to the concerning conservation status of Aquilaria malacensis, quota calculation appears not to be very conservative or robust, which is why we strongly support the specific recommendation of the Secretariat and the Chair of the Plants Committee that any future increases to this quota would require an updated NDF. We strongly recommend to rigorously implement Recommendation C and provide the scientific basis and data for any possible quota setting, as well as to ensure that exports are reasonably and comprehensively not detrimental to the survival of the species. Regarding Recommendation B on mechanisms to ensure correct identification and distinction of wild harvested from artificially propagated specimens, a number of features of different specimens and procedures for traceability has been described by Indonesia in the report. However, reliable distinction along the entire supply chains still appear to be challenging, particularly for wild legacy trees after land use changes and for processed products. We strongly advise for further improvements and measures to ensure correct identification of wild source specimens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I now open the floor to observer parties. I have Vietnam.
Madam Chair, Vietnam is not among the countries under the focus review in this process. However, we have been invited by the Plants Committee 27 to publish a zero quota for wild Aquilaria crassana in line with domestic regulations. We would like to refer to document 33.10 on application of Article 13 on Vietnam, paragraph 41 on observations of the Secretariat through the technical mission to Vietnam in January 2025. The clarifications for Vietnam not yet request to publish such a notification had been explained while we were expecting the revised government decree to be endorsed in early this year, which prohibits extraction of CITES species from the wild for primarily commercial purposes. This means that a zero quota for wild Aquilaria crassana will not be necessary to be established because a stricter measure in the harvest from the wild will be applied. Vietnam shall inform the Secretariat in due course once the revised laws has been enacted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States supports awaiting the outcomes of the Plants Committee consultation process in relation to recommendations 19A, D, E, and G. We also support the recommendations in 19B, C, F, and H with 2 observations. Under Recommendation B, which is the case for Equatorial Guinea and Geoburdia tasmanii, we note that the quota has yet to be published to the CITES website. With regard to Recommendation F, for the case of Nicaragua and Dalbergia retusa, given the progress being made to address the outstanding Plants Committee recommendations, we recommend that the Standing Committee consider revising the deadline for them to complete the implementation of those recommendations to be set at a reasonable date following the estimated completion of the study to be undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Senegal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We followed the Secretariat presentation carefully and would like to refer to the Mozambique case. The cautious quota would be careful management as we see it. So we would like to see that kind of quota granted to Mozambique. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer organizations.
You can say CAFM and then you just go industries.
I have CAFIM.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to briefly comment on behalf of musical instrument stakeholders. The short-term action of the review of significant trade recommendation from PC 27 had to be completed in 90 days. We are aware that the Mozambique and Tanzania Management Authority provided a proposal within the required time frame. Mozambique Management Authority offered a conservative quota on Dalbergia monoxylon by November 14th. As was said during the CITES and Forest side event 2 days ago, and the report presented by Mexico, having a zero quota does not necessarily translate into higher contribution impact in terms of conservation. As we stated in our comprehensive information document 33, access to Dalbergia monoxylon wood materials is essential for the production of clarinet and oboes, and conservation of the species is also a priority for the musical instrument sector. We support the request of Mozambique to apply immediately their conservative quota. We are eager to hear an update and timeline from the Secretariat about access to legally sourced Dalbergia monoxylon wood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a minute to consult with the Secretariat and see where we are. We've had the most discussion on Mozambique's case. Thank you. All right, I'm going to give the Secretariat the floor to explain the RST process again, in particular, how, given Mozambique's request to have a conservative quota approved in relation to the resolution and the process we need to follow.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the range states concerned and the additional clarifications they have provided. Just to clarify, some of the information that we received was too close to the documentation deadline for the Standing Committee, so we had to also allow the Plans Committee sufficient time to consider. Some of these are very extensive non-detriment findings. So the intention is not to delay any decision relating to quotas. It doesn't mean that we will wait until the next Standing Committee to publish any quota that could be accepted by the Plans Committee. It only means that they have requested a little bit more time. So we expect that by the end of this month or mid-March at the latest, we have a final determination on the quotas and we can go ahead and publish any that have been accepted. There are some clarifications that we need to liaise directly with Mozambique and Tanzania, and the Secretariat will reach out to the relevant delegations just to have any clarification that we anticipate from the Plans Committee at this stage to expedite any process relating to any conservative quotas. I also thank the U.S. for pointing out that the zero quota is yet to be published for Equatorial Guinea and Givortia Tasmani. We will make sure that this is published today. And with that, the intention of those 4 cases that are still under review by the Plans Committee is simply to recognize that the recommendations, as were already agreed by the Plans Committee, will be retained for the time being, and any updates on this from the outcomes of the ongoing consultations with the Plans Committee will be reported to the Standing Committee at the next meeting. So we are simply following the consultation process of both the ongoing RSC recommendations for each case, as well as the process that is set out under the resolution 12.8, I believe. So it's just to acknowledge that the recommendations, that relevant recommendations remain ongoing until the Plans Committee finalizes in the upcoming weeks their determination of any relevant quotas. So I hope this clarifies the process, and we will be engaging directly with relevant parties for any needed clarifications that the Plans Committee might bring to our attention. Thank you.
So with that explanation from the Secretariat, I would invite the Standing Committee that we agree to the revised resolution, retain the recommendations in A, D, E, and G until the Plans Committee finishes their review and reports to the Secretariat. And then we agree to the recommendations B, C, F, and H of this document. And then we take note of the Secretariat's report as contained in paragraph 17D of the present document and requests Mozambique to implement adequate control measures and inspection procedures to detect and intercept illegal shipments of specimens of Dalbergia moxilon and to report on this matter to SC 79. So I look to the Standing Committee if that is agreeable and a way forward. And I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification with the taking note that the voluntary quota has not been published for Equatorial Guinea. So just to ensure that that does get published to the CITES website.
We heard from the Secretariat it will be published today, so I don't think we have to take note of that. So I'm looking for the Standing Committee nodding heads or thumbs up that we adopt this, we agree to these recommendations. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. Next agenda item is 63, identifying information on species at risk of extinction affected by international trade, decision 19.186. And I call upon the Secretariat to introduce this document. Give him a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. There was the working group chair, the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At COP19, decisions on identifying information on species at risk of extinction affected by international trade were agreed. In line with these decisions, the Animals and Plants Committees provided their advice at their recent joint session to the Standing Committee Working Group for it to consider. The Standing Committee Working Group discussed this advice towards the fulfillment of its mandate, and the conclusions of this discussion are contained in the draft decisions set out in the annex to this document. It's worth noting that there was limited time available to fully discuss a fairly wide-ranging topic, and so the Standing Committee is invited to consider the draft decisions and any amendments to these decisions they consider necessary. The Working Group did not make a decision on whether to recommend the amendment to Resolution Conf 19.2 on capacity building as recommended by the Animals and Plants Committees. This amendment is included in paragraph 7 of this document, and the Standing Committee is invited to consider whether to recommend this amendment to COP20. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn to Japan.
Thank you, Chair. And Japan believes that it might be premature to establish new dedicated page for the following reasons. First, Japan has concern about the difficulty to ensure the credibility, accuracy, and the quantitative integrity of the information to be posted on a dedicated page. Second, Japan has a concern that the proposed web page may facilitate listing scientific appendices without the views of the reasonableness and scientific ground, and it creates unnecessary paperwork on all parties, and the significant human and financial resources will be diverted from conservation efforts for the species that truly needed to be protected and conserved. Finally, for the following reasons, even if it were to be developed, the dedicated page and the quality of the posted information should be regularly reviewed by the Secretariat and the Animals Committee and the Plants Committee within its budget. I'd like to see the views from other members, other observer parties, and others on this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. We thank the working group for their work, and we note that the suggested new draft decisions will again increase the workload of the CITES Secretariat, even if it is spending to external resources and relies on voluntary input from parties. We caution against developing a separate process to assess information concerning species at risk of extinction that might merit consideration under CITES. So we largely share the concerns raised just by Japan. Ultimately, parties are the ones who should propose amendments to CITES appendices, and therefore it is parties who decide whether to select and propose species for inclusion into the appendices of CITES and how they come to that decision. We therefore propose several amendments to the set of draft decisions in the annex of document 63. Yesterday, we prepared an InfDoc, but realized this morning that it wasn't published yet. So I will try to highlight the rationale of the changes that we propose without going into the textual changes. Basically, we reordered the decisions, so it starts with decisions directed at the Secretariat, subject to external resources, to prepare a dedicated part of the CITES website where parties will be able to upload the relevant information as they see fit in relation to this subject. The new decision 20BB will then be directed to parties and is amended according to the just described reasoning. Recommendation 20CC is amended to accommodate the changes introduced under decision 20AA and 20BB, and decision 20DD would be left unamended. If the chair would like me to go over the details of our changes, I can obviously do that, but I'm conscious about the time. And I realize that this may be difficult for everyone to grasp the extent of the changes. And I also realize that it's probably too late to request for a working group or a drafting group on this. So we suggest to perhaps defer the discussion to a later moment so that parties will have a chance to look at our InfDoc and the suggested changes, and we can have a discussion later on. And to conclude, we also do not support the recommendation to include the language as suggested to Resolution Conf 19.2. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for any other standing committee members wishing to speak to this. We've got suggested amendments by Belgium. We've heard from Japan. I'm seeking views on Japan's suggestion, and I will now turn to observer parties. Oh. Okay, I have Israel.
Thank you, Chair.
I have the USA. Well, Israel, go.
Okay, thank you. Today we're not members of the Standing Committee, we're Observer Party, as Georgia is present as a Standing Committee member. Just very briefly, we support this idea of having a dedicated webpage to help the parties and to know which species are at risk of extinction. And we support most of what Belgium said, though we would like that the website be available for parties and other non-government organizations to be able to upload data. We don't think that this should be a restricted section, so in 20BB little b, we would delete the words "with a link to a restricted section." That is, so it would be develop a dedicated page on the CITES website. And we would support the inclusion of the language in 19.2 as is in paragraph 7 of this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North American region also submitted an information document, which is SC 78 Inf 36. We also have rather extensive edits that we would like to consider making to the decisions, and certainly all of this predicated on whether or not the parties determine at COP that this work should continue. So in that vein, we support Belgium's proposal to maybe defer discussion until it's possible to see what Belgium was proposing as well. Thank you.
I have several parties now wishing to speak. I really ask you to be brief if you can. I'm getting the feeling that this one is going to have quite a lot of amendments suggested, and we don't have time for a working group. I have Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. Switzerland echoes Japan and Belgium concerning paragraph 8, little d. Thank you.
I have China. I have Kuwait as a member, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We align our position with Japan. Thank you.
I have China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We share the same concern with Japan, and we want to support the way the Belgium just proposed. Thank you.
I have Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we are facing a massive extinction crisis, it is of the utmost importance that we ensure CITES provides adequate protection for all threatened species, meeting the listing criteria. We are supportive of the decisions proposed for adoption in this document, and we consider that they are essential in ensuring we are equipped to know that CITES must do what CITES must do to rise to the occasion and adequately protect species. We consider it urgent also that parties are provided adequate support to develop listing proposals. This has remained a significant challenge in our region. We would like to see this important work continue, as we have not yet fully addressed the information and capacity challenges faced by many parties in identifying species that need CITES protection and drafting listing proposals. We therefore recommend to ensure we evaluate whether additional mechanisms are necessary, including the possible amendment of Resolution Conf 19.2 on capacity building, which we support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have Peru, and with that, I will conclude the list of observer parties.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would just like to say that we support the proposals from Japan and Belgium. Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain one intervention from observer organizations. Anyone wishing to speak from an observer organization? I have several. I will have to choose. I will go to traffic.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Traffic would like to thank the co-chairs of the working group for their work. And with regard to the draft decision 20BB, we do not see a need to have a restricted section on the CITES website, which is accessible only to parties. Allowing access to NGOs and other interested parties would facilitate the identification of information gaps and where we need further research in order to support parties in decision-making. In addition, in accordance with the recommendations of the Plants and Animals committees at their meetings, where they considered not just the species that are not yet regulated by CITES, but also those that could be insufficiently covered, traffic suggests in an addition to decision 20BB under B, under Romans I and 1I and 2, where they look not just at the species that could merit being included in the appendices, but also those that could merit having an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now consult with the Secretariat based on the discussion I've heard and try to see how we go forward with this. I'm cognizant that we fell behind, and originally there might have been time for a working group for this to go through all the amendments, but unfortunately we no longer have that time. So I will see what we can do. All right. Based on the discussion I heard and the request of Belgium and Japan, and cognizant of the time, I would say that this is where we are right now. The Standing Committee takes note of the document SC 78, document 63. I heard no support on, except from an observer party, but no support from the Standing Committee on to communicate the amendment to Resolution Conf 19.2 on capacity building included in paragraph 7 of this document. So we would not be, the Standing Committee agrees not to communicate support for this amendment. And then as to the draft decisions, what I'm going to suggest, and I hope this is a way forward, that the Secretariat prepare a COM document taking into account that the discussion that there are amendments proposed by Belgium, US, the North American region, and Japan. And so they will prepare a COM document, and those decisions will come back to us here in Standing Committee. And we would do this in lieu of drafting, having a working group. It's the only way forward, I think. So I'm looking for the Standing Committee's agreement, if they agree with this way forward. And I'm seeing nodding heads, so we'll move forward with this way. Sorry, this is what happens when we fall behind. I will now move on to document 39, Wildlife Crime Enforcement Support in West and Central Africa, decision 19.88, and I will ask the Secretariat to introduce this document. Excuse me, I will get confused when the Secretariat moves next to me. I will basically ask for the working group chair of that document, which is Nigeria, to introduce this document, and my apologies to Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nigeria wishes to appreciate the opportunity given to her to chair the Intersessional Working Group on Wildlife Crime Enforcement Support in West and Central Africa. The document was submitted by Nigeria on behalf of the Working Group on Wildlife Crime Enforcement Support in West and Central Africa. The document includes a summary of discussions based on the mandate agreed at SC 77. The Working Group conclusions are summarized in paragraph 9A and B and are as follows. Regarding Decision 19.88, paragraph B and SC 77 Recommendation B, the Working Group agreed to endorse the conclusions reflected in paragraph 11A to D of document SC 77, doc 39.4. Regarding SC 77 recommendations C and D, the Working Group agreed that a questionnaire was not needed, and therefore, it did not request the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties. Further suggestions related to these discussions are included in the document and proposed as draft decisions for consideration of the Standing Committee. The recommendations of the Working Group are presented in paragraph 14, inviting the Standing Committee to A, note the conclusions reached by the Working Group as presented in paragraph 9A and B of the present document, as well as the limited participation of parties as members of the Working Group in Working Group discussions. B, consider and agree to draft decisions 20.AA to 20.CC as presented in Annex A to the present document. And C, agree that decision 19.88 paragraph B has been implemented and can be deleted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I now open for discussion the Now I call on the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The document reports in accordance with Decision 1987, paragraph E, and includes relevant updates on other decisions on wildlife crime enforcement support in West and Central Africa. It includes the implementation of the IQUIC Toolkit and Indicator Framework and examples of a broad range of support provided, ongoing or planned, at regional and national level. Additional details can be found in SC 78 Doc 38.2 and in Information Document 1. Key elements of responses to Notification 2024-45 from Benin, Nigeria, Senegal, Thailand, Togo, and the United States of America are included in the document, and a summary and full responses are available in Information Document 7. The recommendations are included in paragraph 42A to C and the proposed draft decision in Annex. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm opening for discussion both the recommendations in document 39.1, paragraph 14, and the recommendations in 39.2 in paragraph 42. And I open the floor to the Standing Committee members. I move on to observer parties and have Benin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Benin welcomes the results that were obtained by the working group, and we'd like to congratulate Nigeria for the good leadership. We support the working group recommendations, and we think that they are constructive. However, we would propose that we add another decision so that we can evaluate if the measures that are proposed are sufficient or if supplementary financial mechanisms should be considered. If you would allow me, we have a proposal to add to 20DD. The Standing Committee shall examine if other actions or mechanisms may be necessary to guarantee the implementation of CITES is financed adequately, and will submit the relevant information to the COP. Thank you. That was our suggestion.
Thank you. I now in particular look for Standing Committees members for their thoughts on this suggestion of an additional decision. I have the DRC.
Merci, Madame la...
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of Central Africa region, we congratulate Nigeria on the document that has been submitted and the quality of the work. We'd also like to thank the members of the working group who made efforts to be able to hold these constructive exchanges, and we'd like to take note of all the recommendations that were proposed and encourage the Secretariat to ensure they are implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Gabon.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to congratulate the Intersessional Working Group on Wildlife Crime Enforcement in Western Central Africa, and we must redouble our efforts to protect the wildlife species, in particular that we have a rich and precious diversity of wildlife, which is under a great deal of threat, and the capacities of parties in the region to combat these threats is limited. So Gabon would like to highlight the importance of taking into account the importance of international cooperation and financing mechanisms. For example, the Genetic Laboratory on Fauna has collaborated with Cameroon to assist with Resolution 1010 and its content. We'd like to redouble these type of collaborations, but we see that there is not identification of a sustainable financial mechanism. So Gabon supports the draft decisions 20AA and 20 CC in the document 39.1 and the draft decision that has been proposed by Benin 20 DD. Thank you.
I have Senegal.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senegal was one of the parties that submitted this document on the creation of the CITES Fund at the last meeting. And so we thank Nigeria for having continued the work, and we support the additional proposal for decision that Benin submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also want to thank Nigeria for the leadership in the working group and the outcome of the intersectional working group. We do agree with the recommendations as mentioned in the document. We do feel that this is the first step. We did identify that the awareness of funding opportunities was lacking, and we do see that we need to get this step first and have some more information as proposed in the documents, like information on the CITES website on this, and then maybe in the future we can see for if extra funding is necessary, but for the moment we do not agree with the proposed decision from Gabon. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer organizations. Not seeing any requests. I have EIA UK.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are speaking on behalf of EIA and SIG organizations. We support the interventions made by Nigeria and Belgium. Regional and international cooperation has long been recognized by CITES stakeholders as critical for the protection of species exploited for the illegal wildlife trade and essential to combating organized wildlife crime. Parties have been repeatedly encouraged to use CQ as a key mechanism, including I-24/7 and the census provided by Interpol and the World Customs Organization, respectively, to exchange enforcement and wildlife crime-related information as per Decision 19.84 and Resolution Conference 11.3, REPCOP 19. We would welcome more detailed analysis to assess the quantifiable extent to which parties are making use of this mechanism to routinely exchange intelligence and information. IQUIT partner and party are encouraged to explore options to better understand the level of use of this mechanism and their impact on tackling illegal wildlife trade. In addition, we encourage all parties, in particular those from West and Central Africa and those implicated in wildlife traffic from the region, to seek guidance from IQUIT partners on the use of this mechanism. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think we've had some discussion on all of this. I will now consult with the Secretariat and look for a way forward from the Standing Committee. All right, so what I'm going to propose is essentially that the Standing Committee accepts the recommendations in paragraph 14A, B, C, and in document 39.2, the Standing Committee approves the recommendations in A, B, C, little I, little 2 I, and I did not hear any support from the Standing Committee members on the new decision suggested by Benin 20DD, and therefore we would not be adding that one. Is that where we are on agreeing to this document? These two documents? I see nodding heads, and then I will conclude with this. Thank you. All right, this is document 40, SC 7840, illegal trade in cheetahs, decision 19.106, and I call on the Secretariat to introduce this document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document report on the implementation of COP decision on illegal trade in cheetah, following the Secretariat notification in September 2024, 3 parties only reported on progress on implementing the decision. The response are detailed in document SC 78 Inf Doc 10 and summarized in the present document. In addition, 1 party requested assistance from IQUIC, the International Consortium on Combating Wildlife Crime, to address the illegal trade in cheetah. The Secretariat collaborated with IQUIC partners, especially Interpol, who was organizing the regional investigative and analytical case meeting in Nairobi, Kenya from 9 to 10 December 2024, and this party was invited. In light of the limited responses to notification, the Secretariat considered that the matter outlined in decision 19.104 could benefit further attention, and therefore propose to replace decision 19.104 to 19.106 with new draft decision, which also take into consideration the outcome from the CITES Big Cat Task Force. The Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendation in paragraph 28. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor to Standing Committee members for discussion on the document. I have Poland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EU and its member states continue to be concerned about the high levels of illegal trade in cheetahs, in particular cheetah cubs. We invite parties with an illegal market for cheetahs to step up efforts to reduce the illegal demand. Concerning recommendation A and B, we thank the parties responding to notification to the parties number 2024-097, and regrettably note that responses to the notification were limited. In view of the new draft decisions and the necessary progress to be made in the conservation of cheetahs, it will be helpful to better understand the reason for limited responses and find ways to enhance involvement of those parties affected by illegal trade in cheetahs. To address possible developments and trends in illegal trade in cheetahs, we believe it might be useful that the Secretariat identifies as appropriate the parties affected by illegal trade in cheetahs through, for instance, the latest illegal trade reports. This will clarify which parties are encouraged to implement the draft decisions and, in accordance with point D of Decision 20AA, report to the Secretariat. Due to continued high levels of illegal trade, we strongly support Decision 20AA and especially invite parties with an illegal market for cheetahs to step up efforts to reduce the illegal demand for cheetah cubs. We feel the need to strengthen Decision 20AA and align the wording with the decision proposed in document 42 on the CITES Big Cat Task Force that requests parties affected by illegal trade in big cats to encourage to make every effort to fully implement the strategies, measures, and activities outlined in the CITES Big Cats Task Force outcome document as relevant. Decision 20AA would then read, Parties affected by illegal trade in cheetahs are encouraged to make every effort to fully implement the recommendations, and it continues. Noting that there is some overlap with the decision proposed in document 42 on the CITES Big Cat Task Force, we would like to suggest the Secretariat to take a practical approach into account as much as possible in the reporting requests in order to avoid duplication of reporting on the same activities and efforts under different decisions and reduce burden to parties. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer parties. I have Najir.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We must recognize that cheetahs in Africa face ongoing and various serious threats from poaching. They are in a critical situation. This has to stop. We're dealing here with a species under threat, particularly the northeast subspecies. We must do everything we can as soon as we can to ensure its conservation. As a cheetah range state, we support the Secretariat's recommendations, including the draft decisions in the Annex to Doc 40. We would urge all countries involved in this trade to support these recommendations and the implementations of decisions taken by COP20. Thank you, Madam.
I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking as the United States thanks the Secretariat for the preparation of the document. The United States supports the recommendations in paragraph 28 of the document with one edit to draft decision 20AA-C. We recommend adding a specific reference to sections 3.1 E through F and 5.1 A through I of the Big Cat Task Force outcome document to provide concrete examples of collaborative opportunities to, as identified by the parties. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Regarding recommendations contained in document SC 78, Doc 40, I would like to clarify that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia considers the recommendations appropriate. I would like also to take the opportunity to clarify some of the efforts made in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to protect cheetahs. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has previously banned the import of live big cats for commercial or personal use and has tightened control over air, land, and seaports, local markets, and the internet to prevent any illegal trade in big cats and impose strict penalties for any violators. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia also established a specialized security sector for environment compliance, which is called the Special Forces for Environmental Security to raise the level of compliance. A memorandum of understanding has been signed with the International Fund for Animal Welfare, IFO, from which a joint project emerged to combat the illegal trade in big cats, including capacity building for law enforcement officers, demand reduction, and rising performance in combating big cats trafficking. It was announced last year that a group of fully and naturally reversed cheetah mummies were discovered in caves northern of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, dating back thousands of years, which gives a great evidence of the presence of cheetahs in the Arabian Peninsula in the past. Accordingly, the National Center for Wildlife announced a national strategy to protect cheetahs, which includes a program to return cheetahs to the nature in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I call on Benin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Benin also supports the position of Niger with respect to document 40. Thank you.
And lastly, I have Senegal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Senegal today, it's difficult for us to see any cheetahs. In other words, the species is under serious threat, has almost disappeared, in fact. That is why we recommend that this document be adopted, and we would also like to take on board what Niger has said. We want others to avoid undergoing what we have to face today. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support the statement made by Poland, specifically with the duplication of the work between this document and the big cats and the duplication of reporting. So we would like to support this this point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. I have several parties wishing to speak yet. I will limit it to 2. I have Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe appreciates the report as presented by the CITES Secretariat, and you are in support of the recommendations as stated. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenya is a red state of cheetahs, and we are saddened by the continued smuggling of cheetah cubs. And regrettably, no responses from consumer countries were received, significantly undermining the ability of parties to make informed decisions regarding cheetah trafficking. Madam Chair, we wish to support the proposed decisions by the Secretariat and also the amendments that have been proposed by Niger and supported by other parties. I thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain one intervention by an observer organization. They haven't spoken yet, so I will call on the Big Cat Alliance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The International Big Cat Alliance is a recently created international organization by the Government of India with $18 million funding support as a coalition of 95 range countries for conservation of 7 big cats, namely cheetah, tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, jaguar, and puma. So far, 27 countries have already consented to join IBCA. After ratification by 5 countries, namely Nicaragua, Eswatini, India, Somalia, and Liberia, IBCA has become a treaty-based intergovernmental international organization since 23rd January 2025. As IBCA is participating in the CITES meeting for the first time, we thank you, CITES Secretariat Standing Committee, and Switzerland for providing this opportunity. We welcome and strongly support the recommendations on the draft decisions regarding illegal trade in cheetah. As cheetah population in the wild is showing a declining trend in general, we urge range countries to implement the recommendations on ground effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now consult with the Secretariat on a way forward. The chair would like to go back to Niger to be absolutely clear what they are changing in the decision. So could Niger please read out your suggested amendment to these draft decisions?
Merci.
Thank you, Madam. Niger did not have a specific proposal. It was a matter of supporting the recommendations as proposed. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you for your clarification. So I'd like to propose to the Standing Committee that we accept the recommendations in paragraph 28, and little c, we would basically ask to submit the draft decisions 20AA as amended by Poland and the United States, and 20BB and 20CC remain as is, and we would submit them to the 20th Conference of the Parties. So is that acceptable? I'm looking for nodding heads. Okay, we can move forward then on this one. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 42, the CITES Big Cats Task Force, decision 19.93, and I give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. In document 42 on the CITES Big Cat Task Force, which convened in Uganda in April 2023 and was discussed at SC77, the Secretariat reports on the feedback received from parties and from the Animals Committee on a potential new resolution on illegal trade in all big cat species, or a revision of Resolution Conf 12.5 Rev Cop 19 on conservation of and trade in tigers and other Appendix 1 Asian big cat species to broaden its application to all big cat species. Based on the feedback received, the Secretariat recommends that the committee not pursue the development of a new resolution nor to consider revising Resolution Conf 12.5 Rev Cop 19. The outcome from the Big Cat Task Force offers solid groundwork for combating illegal trade in big cat species. The Secretariat proposes 3 draft decisions for consideration as outlined in the annex. The committee is invited to consider the recommendations in paragraph 11. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor to Standing Committee members for discussion of the recommendations in paragraph 11. I have Poland.
Thank you, Chair. We support the recommendations, including the newly drafted decisions. We would like to highlight the alarming situation of international illegal trade in big cat specimens. This calls for securing the implementation of the strategies, measures, and activities outlined in the outcome document of the Big Cat Task Force. Especially given the substitution of different species in illegal trade, we find it important to take into account any development and trend in illegal trade in big cats and stress the importance of parties reporting the annual illegal trade to be able to adequately implement the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer parties. And I have India.
Thank you, Chair. India welcomes the suggestions contained in paragraph 11B and C of the document 78.42 and the draft decision 20.AA to 20.CC presented in the annexure of the document. We feel that there is a need to continue exploring the possibility of bringing out a resolution on illegal trade in big cats in order to help strengthen regional and international collaboration to address issues involving illegal trade in big cat species. Further, India would also like to invite big cat-rich countries, interested non-rich countries, as well as the intergovernmental organizations and non-governmental organizations for considering partnership with the International Big Cat Alliance. This alliance was launched by Government of India in April 2023 for strengthening global cooperation and efforts to conserve the 7 big cat species, namely tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, cheetah, jaguar, and puma. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have Tanzania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania also participated in the meeting that was held in Uganda and support the draft decision and recommendation under paragraph 11. We feel it is not appropriate time to pursue a specific resolution for big cat, for combating illegal trade in big cats, as resolution is not the solution, but rather range states should put mechanisms and strategies on the ground to ensure that big cats are well protected, but relying on resolution will not solve the challenges that we are facing on the ground. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I call on Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Nosotros.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Peru supports the adoption of the decisions in this document. We would also support the decision not to go ahead with an additional resolution on big cats trade, as there's not broad enough consensus among parties in order to actually move forward with such a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, I call on Senegal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senegal would like to express support for Tanzania. As I said, with respect to birds, we, humanity, are targeting animals more and more, and big cats are indeed suffering. We need to ensure that we have conservation methods. And when I was an official, I refused to grant certificates if there was any threat. We need to ensure that you maintain the social structure of these creatures. You need male, female, and young. You cannot have them in isolation. That is not right. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I turn to observer organizations. I have traffic.
Thank you, Chair. I'm reading this intervention on behalf of a number of organizations. We value the discussion around a single resolution for all big cat species, and we support the position of Poland, Zimbabwe, and others. While certain strategies to counter illegal trade in big cat species can and should be uniformly applied, the varying factors influencing the trade depend on the specific species and their geographical context, necessitating tailored solutions for each species. Therefore, it does not provide an economy of effort to bring them together in one resolution, but instead would complicate and confuse matters by addressing them all together. This is unnecessary when there is the existing opportunity to have the individual resolutions for more big cat species and/or regions than needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will consult with the Secretariat. I think we've had sufficient discussion that I can suggest a way forward. All right, simply, I think the Standing Committee agrees to adopt the recommendations in paragraph 11A, B, and C. Is that the way forward? I'm trying not to have to read them all out because I'm trying to save time. I see nodding heads, and we will move on to the next agenda item. Moving on to agenda item 43, Asian Big Cats, Resolution Comp 12.5, Rev Cop 19, Decision 18.109, Rev Cop 19, and I will turn to the Secretariat to introduce this document.
Thank you, Chair. Document 43.1 addresses the implementation of Resolution Conf 12.5 Rev Cop 19 and relevant decisions concerning the conservation of and trade in tigers and other Appendix 1 Asian big cat species. The Secretariat also provided detailed reporting to the committee in document SC77 Doc 41.1 on Asian big cats, considered by the committee at SC77. Following the Secretariat's notification in August 2024, 11 parties have reported progress. The responses are detailed in information document INF Doc 9 and summarized in the present document. The Secretariat recommends deleting decisions that are now covered in the CITES Big Cat Task Force outcome document and Resolution Conf 12.5 Rev Cop 19. Further, the Secretariat proposes that decisions 18.107 Rev Cop 19 and 18.109 Rev Cop 19 be deleted as they have been implemented. The Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendations in paragraph 28. Thank you, Chair.
I open the floor to Standing Committee members. Observer parties. I have Poland.
Thank you, Chair. We take note of the document and support the recommendations as proposed by the Secretariat. We recognized the identified best practices, but also challenges in the implementation of the Resolution Conf 12.5 and the relevant decisions as reported by the parties. We would like to encourage parties to further strengthen the efforts to tackle illegal trade in the specimens of Asian big cat species and conservation of Asian big cat species in the wild. Thank you.
I have India.
Thank you, Chair. India welcomes the suggestions of the Secretariat as contained in paragraph 28.82C of the document AC 78 Doc 43.1 and the decisions in Annexure 1. India also encourages parties affected by illegal trade in Asian big cats to implement the strategies and measures and activities outlined in the CITES Big Cats Task Force outcome document, which provides a strong basis to address the illegal trade. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Observer organizations. World Wildlife Fund.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of a number of organizations. It is our view that this document does not contain a meaningful review of the conservation status or illegal trade in Asian leopards, and therefore urge that this SC77 recommendation is renewed. There is little evidence that Decision 18.105 has been properly implemented. Monitoring of the implementation of many of other decisions has also been affected by low response rates by parties or non-specific responses. Some of these decisions refer to a 2019 report in COP 18, Doc 71.1, which may now be out of date. Therefore, we accept the recommendation to delete those other decisions, but we strongly urge the committee recommend that ResConf 12.5 is amended to include an independent review mechanism to better monitor the implementation of the Convention for Asian Big Cats, similar to the one for rhinos in ResConf 9.14. This would decrease the reporting and administrative burden on parties and the Secretariat, and improve the quality of information available for decision making. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will consult with the Secretariat and give a way forward. The Chair proposes that the Standing Committee agree to the recommendations in paragraph 28, A, B, and C. I see nodding heads, and we will move on to the next document. But before I move on to the next agenda item, I'm looking to see if my understanding is correct. I understand that we are postponing until tomorrow the agenda item on jaguars to allow more time for the range states to discuss the document. Am I correct in that? I see Brazil nodding, so we will need to add jaguars to the agenda tomorrow. Gives us a little more time today, but I know tomorrow we've got COM documents, so I really hope that we can start to pick up speed. I'm trying. All right, I will now move to agenda item 43.2, Asian big cats in captivity, and I turn to the Secretariat to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. The document reports on the implementation of decisions regarding Asian big cats in captivity since SC 77. It includes proposed draft decisions outlined in Annex 2 based on recommendations agreed upon at SC 77. Small changes have been made to these draft decisions in the revised document to improve alignment with the SC 77 recommendations. Czechia has submitted a report as requested by SC 77 and noted a correction regarding the birth of 4 cubs at the facility inspected. The cubs were born 2 months after the Secretariat's mission. Czechia has committed to regularly inspect the facility to mitigate illegal trade risks. The Animals Committee agreed that the IUCN SSC guidelines on the use of ex situ management for species conservation provides the guidance needed by parties on evaluation of conservation aspects of tiger captive breeding facilities. The Secretariat reports that it has completed missions to China and the USA and would like to clarify that the notification issued by China in May 2024 specifically addressed the suspension of the issuance of any new license for the captive breeding of protected terrestrial wild animals, such as tigers. Specific recommendations for both countries are detailed in paragraph 59 of the document. Thank you, Chair.
I open the floor to Standing Committee members to discuss the recommendations in paragraph 59. I have Poland.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to acknowledge the CITES Secretariat for conducting the remaining tiger missions and the US and China for the cooperation on these missions. We support proposed further recommendations for China and the US, highlighting the need for centralized registration of tigers bred and developing standardized procedures for handling of tiger carcasses, including their destruction. We agree to delete decisions 18, 102, 108, and 109, as they have been implemented. We would like to highlight the need for proper implementation of Decision 1469, urging parties to restrict the captive population of tigers to a level supportive only to conserving wild tigers. Taking into account the outcomes of the missions, including those reported at Standing Committee 77th meeting, this decision is not fully implemented in some countries. We support draft decisions 20AA on tigers in captivity, suggesting amendments in 2 paras. First amendment is in paragraph F. In the last sentence, we would like to suggest adding after the words regular inspections and well-regulated disposal of tigers that die in captivity, the new text, which would read, and handling of carcasses, including their destruction. Another suggestion is in paragraph C. We would like to insert afterwards, within these facilities, the new text, and addressing the risks of inbreeding by requiring genetic monitoring, and then it would read as it is, as well as restricting these facilities from acquiring any new animals. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I now open the floor to observer parties. I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We support the submission to COP20 of the draft decisions in Annex 2 of this document and the specific proposals to the parties in paragraphs 59D and E of the recommendations. We also agree that decisions 18.102 and 18.108 and 18.109 can be proposed for deletion, and we note that the number of decisions directed to specific parties will have been adopted by both Standing Committee 77 and at this meeting. And so we believe it would be helpful if the parties involved could report progress to the Standing Committee. We therefore suggest that draft decision 20AA in Annex 2 of the document includes in the proposed notification an additional request to parties that are the subject of specific Standing Committee recommendations to also report. Thank you.
I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of the United States appreciates the Secretariat's efforts regarding this issue, and in particular its commitment of staff, time, and resources to undertake a mission to the United States in March 2024. We appreciate the Secretariat's observations and recommendations concerning U.S. facilities keeping Asian big cats in captivity, and will work with relevant federal partners to take them into consideration to the extent practicable, consistent with domestic law and regulations. We encourage that any parties possessing stockpiles of Asian big cat specimens that do not serve bona fide educational, scientific, enforcement, or identification purposes be destroyed. With regard to the other recommendations in the document, we support the Standing Committee noting the report from Czechia relating to the inspection of the facility that the Secretariat could not visit during its mission, noting the Animals Committee's recommendation that the IUC and SSC guidelines provide guidance to parties on how to evaluate the conservation aspects of tiger captive breeding facilities, as well as the other documents and guidelines referenced in paragraphs 14 and 15 of the document. We also support submitting the draft decisions in Annex 2 to the document for consideration to COP20, and agreeing that decisions 18.102, 108, and 109 have been implemented and can be proposed for deletion. Finally, we support the amendments to the draft decisions that were provided here by Poland and the United Kingdom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I turn to China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China is honored to have hosted the Secretariat's waste and deeply appreciates the delegation's dedication, professionalism, and enthusiasm. We also appreciate the Secretariat's objective and informative report on its observation in China. The findings are fair, the constructive and the positive comments are valuable. The report provides convincing evidence that China upholds the strictest management measures for tiger facilities, supported by robust legal framework and effective law enforcement in wildlife conservation. This reinforces our confidence that well-regulated captive breeding will not lead to poaching and illicit trade, but will make a contribution to conservation in the wild. To this sense, we cannot agree UK. As always, China welcomes constructive, fact-based suggestions and comments to further strengthen our efforts in tiger conservation and facilities management. To ensure the decisions outlined in this document are effectively implemented by the parties, we propose 3 amendments. Based on CITES' long-standing principle, national sovereignty should be respected as a priority. First, replace urged with encouraged in paragraph 20.AA. Second, add the phrase in accordance with domestic laws, regulations, and circumstances at the end of the first subparagraph in paragraph 20AA. Third, delete the word fully in line 4 of subparagraph lit B of paragraph 20AA. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think you went a little too fast for the chair even, so could you please slowly repeat your suggested amendments?
Yes. First, replace urged with encouraged in paragraph 20AA. The reason is that the current concepts, a large number, and conservation have different understanding among different countries. This is the first suggestion. The second, add the phrase in accordance with domestic laws, regulations, and circumstances at the end of the first subparagraph in paragraph 20AA. So this is a requirement to respect the national sovereignty. Third, delete the word fully in line 4 of subparagraph lit B of paragraph 20AA. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. Kuwait acknowledge and appreciate country's commitment to the conservation of Asia big cats. Kuwait would like to support the China proposal amendment to the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. We support China's amendment towards the document. Thank you.
I call on Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe supports proposed amendments by China. Thank you.
I have many parties wishing to speak now. I may not get to all of you, so I'm trying to have some regional representation in these interventions. So I call on South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa supports the comments made by China. Thank you.
I have Cambodia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cambodia support the proposed amendment by China. Thank you.
I have Laos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Laos also express significant concern to this issue. That's why we support China.
I have Poland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly to support the UK suggestion, and for now we are not comfortable with the suggestions by China. Thank you.
I will call on Bangladesh and then consult with the Secretariat. I know I have several parties still wishing to speak on this one, but I am cognizant of time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bangladesh support the amendment suggestions of China. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. Oceania would support the United Kingdom and others. Thank you.
And maybe what I can do with the remaining parties, to be fair, if they would like, could do what I did yesterday. If you are aligning with Poland and the UK suggestion, or aligning with so we can get it on the record, because I'm assuming that's why you want to intervene, aligning with China. So can I ask those that have requested the floor, if you are aligning with China, wipe your screens and then press your button, and I'll read out the countries. So I have Singapore, Sudan, Thailand, Laos, Zambia, Tanzania, and Peru. And I ask if this is to speak in support of China. Mali. Kuwait, I will call on you in a minute. Japan, all right. So, yeah, I'll ask the Secretariat to read them. These are the countries that are basically asking to speak, and I had said if you are in support of China to indicate that so we can get it in the record rather than have all these interventions.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be grateful if you could re-press your button again, and as I call you, please press to turn it off. Thank you. So I have Sudan. Please turn off your microphone as I call your names. Or not. I'll turn you off. Okay. Thailand. Zambia. Peru. Tanzania. Nigeria. Mali. Singapore, Kuwait, Japan, and Namibia, and Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you. I'm just trying something new. I know you want to make interventions. I'm trying to at least get your support on the record. I will now give one or two, depending on the views, observer organizations to speak, and then I will consult with the Secretariat. So I have EIA UK.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of a number of organizations whose names have been provided to the Secretariat. We support the recommendations in the document, including the suggestion by the United Kingdom to include reporting on the country-specific recommendations adopted by SC 77 and at this meeting, and suggest one more amendment to draft decision 20AA. This is that the focus should not be restricted only to facilities that breed large numbers of tigers, as those with small numbers who are also engaged in illegal trade are also of concern. We note progress by both the USA and China, but we encourage the committee to ask China to report to SC 79 on why there is a large discrepancy between the 6,057 captive tigers reported for the country by the Secretariat in 2018 and the 2,744 reported in this document. Since the document states that skins and bones are secured from carcasses of deceased tigers, we encourage the committee to invite China to report on the purpose of retaining such significant stockpiles. We also encourage the committee to adopt additional recommendations urging the USA and China to restrict breeding to levels only supportive of wild tiger conservation and to prohibit the establishment of new facilities with narrow exceptions where warranted. This is in line with SE 77 recommendations adopted for Laos, PDR, Thailand, and Vietnam, and Decision 14.69. Finally, to support implementation of SE 77 and 78 recommendations and Decision 14.69, some of our organizations have developed general guidance for the inspection of captive tiger facilities, including guidance on conservation breeding. We stand ready to assist with the implementation of these matters. Thank you, Chair.
All right, I'm going to call on the Secretariat, because we've had several changes proposed, to sort of go over what the changes are in the recommendations, which ones are changing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will only focus on the paragraphs where amendments were proposed by the Standing Committee members, and then additional amendments by China supported by Standing Committee members. So 20AA, remove urge by encourage, so all parties in whose territories there are facilities that breed large numbers of tigers and facilities housing large numbers of tigers are encouraged to consider taking the following methodical approach. And that sentence will end with in accordance with domestic legislation. Then 20AA subparagraph B, remove the word fully, so it will read for these facilities to transform into facilities with education value. So the word fully is removed. But subparagraph C, the proposed addition from the EU, from Poland, it will read implement and enforce measures to reduce the number of tigers in facilities that are not contributing to conservation of wild tigers or have limited education value by restricting breeding of tigers, for example, by separating male and female tigers, sterilization or other disposal measures, including euthanasia, within these facilities, and addressing the risk of inbreeding by requiring genetic monitoring. And then the rest of the sentence. Then in subparagraph F, at the end of the sentence, Poland proposed to include the following: regular inspection and well-regulated disposal of tigers that die in captivity, and handling of carcasses, including their destruction. We've heard some opposition to that. and maybe a compromise would be just to remove the including their distraction and to keep well-regulated disposal of tigers that die in captivity and handling of carcasses. Does that also align with recommendations by the Secretariat to address stockpile management? And then in subparagraph G, we heard from the UK to include additional reporting requirement for all the parties that have recommendations addressed to them through SC 77 and SC 78. We've heard opposition to that from China, supported by members of the Standing Committee, Kuwait and Japan. And those are the changes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'm in particular looking to the Standing Committee members if we can agree to these changes. And I think the biggest disagreement is the compromise text that we read out. I remind us that this is what the Standing Committee will send to the COP if we agree to it. At the COP, parties and others will definitely have opportunities to discuss this further. So I'm looking for the product that we, the Standing Committee, can best send to the COP to help guide the discussions there. Not seeing any Standing Committee members wishing to speak, can I look to Standing Committee members if they can agree to these changes? Nodding heads. I'm seeing a lot of people staring at me, but not getting some smiles. So I think they can agree and live with these. So let me try to sum up what we have done with this document then. Oh, I'll turn to the Secretariat. I turn to Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. If the CITES Secretariat can repeat the amendment, please.
Thank you, Chair. So 20AA, the word urged will be replaced by encouraged, and at the end of the sentence it will include in accordance with domestic legislation. In subparagraph B, the word fully will be deleted. In subparagraph C, the amendment and addressing the risk of inbreeding by requiring genetic monitoring will be included. Subparagraph F, the wording and handling of carcasses will be added at the end of the sentence, and that is it.
So I invite the Standing Committee members to agree to recommendations A, B, D, E, and F. And then C would read, agree the draft decisions in Annex 2 in the present document to the Conference of Parties as read out by the Secretariat here in plenary. So with the changes that you just heard. So I look for agreement from the Standing Committee if that's the way forward.
It is accepted by Kuwait. Thank you.
Then I think we have agreement on this and we can move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for your patience with this one. We have the UK, sorry.
Apologies, Chair. I just want to confirm the report, the proposal that we had on the table for reporting for parties with specific recommendations.
Yeah, we didn't include the reporting. I know the UK proposed it. I heard Japan and Kuwait oppose it. We can have, we can have further discussion of that, but I need to hear from some other, I guess Poland supported you as well as the US, so sort of split on that one. Maybe I could ask you to read that language again, because there was some confusion by us here on the podium as to the exact language of how the reporting would work and when.
Thank you. So the point G of draft decision 20AA would then read, report on the implementation of this approach, and in the case of the relevant countries, report on the implementation of the country-specific recommendations made by the Standing Committee at Standing Committee 77 and 78, and then continue on. Too fast, sorry. So it would read, report on the implementation of this approach, and in the case of relevant countries, report on the implementation of the country-specific recommendations made by the Standing Committee at Standing Committee 77 and 78, and then would continue as normal. Thank you.
Yeah, so could I ask the Standing Committee members from Asia if they can accept that change for reporting? In the spirit of compromise? Okay, we accept that change, and thank you, UK, that I missed that one. I wasn't clear till you did it the second time. Thank you. So again, Jaguars is postponed. And we will move on to document 45, rhinoceros, decisions 19.121. And I call on the Secretariat to introduce the rhinos.
Thank you, Chair. The document provides an update on the implementation of COP19 decisions and SE77 recommendations on rhinoceroses. The document focuses on parties most affected by rhino poaching and rhino trafficking, to whom decisions 19.117, 118, and 119 are directed. In addition, it focuses on Angola and Namibia as parties that are affected by emerging issues of concern. The document also highlights the need for parties to scale up efforts to collect and share samples from seized rhino horn for forensic analysis. The Secretariat also regrets to inform parties that arrangements for the CITES Rhinoceros Enforcement Task Force meeting are paused because co-funding that was available to convene the meeting is temporarily unavailable. The Secretariat will make efforts to secure alternative co-funding as soon as possible. The recommendations of the Secretariat for consideration by the committee are provided in paragraph 70 of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I will now open up to standing committee members, but I ask us to be brief on this agenda item. I know probably everyone wants to speak. However, we are now on Friday morning's agenda, the very first item, and we have 1 hour of the morning remaining, so we're trying to put 3 hours of work into 1 hour. So I have Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to support recommendations and urge parties affected by illegal rhino horn trade to increase efforts in implementing measures reducing poaching, illicit trade and demand for rhino horns. As for the recommendation B in paragraph 70, we suggest to add at the end of this sentence the following addition, quote, and report on any activities conducted in this regard to the Secretariat for inclusion in its report to COP20, end of quotation. We regret lack of or limited reporting from certain parties seriously affected by illegal rhino horn trade. We encourage them to provide the Secretariat with the written information requested, which can enable the proper assessment of the effort made and support needed. We'd like to also indicate that oral reports, although always welcome and important, cannot replace the informal written reporting requirements, and we wish to encourage those parties which are expected to provide or supplement the written reports to do so in a timely manner, no later than, as we propose, 60 days from this meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenya would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing this document, and thanks all the parties that provided information on their action to implement the COP decisions and the Standing Committee recommendation on the rhinoceros issues. Madam Chair, Kenya has continued to maintain very low poaching. Like for last year, we recorded 0 poaching levels, but you are aware that poaching of rhinos and international rhino horn trafficking are critical challenges in some range states that must be addressed. And the information provided by rhino range states and countries affected by rhino horn trafficking is essential for informing effective policy and enforcement decisions. Madam Chair, will therefore want to agree with the proposal that has been given by Poland to add the following text at the end of recommendation A through to D, that add on a report on any activities conducted in this regard to the Secretariat for inclusion in its report on 2020, as proposed by Poland. Madam Chair, we also want to recognize the meaningful steps that end-use countries have taken to reduce the demand that fuels rhino poaching, and emphasize that it is important for all parties to continue to support demand reduction efforts with the goal of achieving consumer behavior change. For this reason, we recommend that the Standing Committee agree to a new recommendation G, recommending that COP20 renew decision 18.116 on rhino horn demand reduction. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer parties. I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of the United States, we support adoption or agreement of the recommendations in this document, including the amendments suggested by Poland and Kenya. Thank you, Chair.
I call on Namibia.
Thank you, Chair. Namibia has prepared and submitted information document SC 78 in 44 to report on the implementation of recommendations D contained in paragraph 3 of document SC 78, Doc 45. Madam Chair, the trends associated with both illegal killing in rhinoceros and trade in rhinoceros specimens in Namibia are contained in our INF document. In a nutshell, illegal killing increased slightly from 2023 to 2024. However, after we revised our anti-poaching measures and activities, as the outcome of the meeting referred to in para 56 of the document under discussion, we noticed a decline in the rate of illegal killing of rhinoceros in the second half of 2024 compared to the first half of 2023. Of 2024. No record of illegal killing of rhinoceros has been recorded in Namibia this year, Chairperson. The implemented measures and activities are contained in paragraphs 5 and 6 of our information document. In addition to those measures and activities, Namibia is excited to announce the establishment of the Environmental Crimes Court, which became fully operational in January of this year. This demonstrates our country's commitment to safeguard wildlife and the natural environment. Madam Chair, Namibia remains committed to continuously review the trends associated with rhinoceros-related crimes to ensure that the measures and activities implemented are effective. With those words, Chairperson, we support the recommendations contained in document SC 78, Doc 45. I thank you.
Thank you. I call on China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an oral update on China's implementation on the decisions for rhinoceros. As expected, China attached the highest priority to conservation, management, and law enforcement of rhinoceros. Strict regulation prohibiting the import, export, and transportation of rhinoceros and their products are immediately and thoroughly implemented. For more than 1 decade, China has funded and delivered seminars on wildlife conservation and CITES implementation for developing countries. This provides opportunities for the officials from South Africa and many other parties to exchange information and share best practice. SMS messages are sent automatically to Chinese when they travel overseas to inform them of regulations and to remind them not to engage in any illegal activities on rhinoceros and other wildlife. We continue to organize many education activities in South Africa, Mozambique, and other range states to introduce and inform CITES implementation and policies and urge local Chinese and Chinese-funded enterprises to abide by all laws and CITES regulations. Finally, China has prioritized law enforcement cooperation with other parties so we can jointly combat illegal trading in rhino. China's customs and police have continued to increase international information exchange and cooperation with WCO, Interpol, and other organizations to promote joint cross-border law enforcement. These efforts to strengthen law enforcement and international cooperation have paid off. In recent years, the number of rhino specimens seized by law enforcement has dropped significantly, and we thank relevant parties for their cooperation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I call on Congo.
Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that the Republic of Congo is taking the floor for the first time at this meeting. We would like to thank CITES and all parties for everything done to protect world biodiversity. We particularly like to thank you for everything being done to protect species under threat. Our country has its role to play given its rich biodiversity. We would like to take this opportunity to reiterate our commitment to CITES measures, particularly with respect to the protection of rhinoceri and other species in our territory under threat. We welcome all international measures taken against trafficking and poaching in wild species. We would make an appeal for enhanced activities in Central Africa in order to ensure that we have proper monitoring systems as well as capacity building and appropriate legislation. We need solidarity and coordination. That is the only way we will be able to bring an end to this scourge, which endangers not only our wildlife but sustainable development. We would like to take this opportunity to say once again that we are ready and willing to cooperate with all CITES parties and international bodies in order to guarantee fair and sustainable management of our resources. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have 4 observer parties wishing to speak that are range states. I will allow those yet, but then I'm closing the floor to observer parties, so don't press any more buttons. I have Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana would wish to acknowledge the commendation by the Secretariat in Doc 45 for our efforts in reversing trends on the illegal killing and illegal trade of rhinoceroses. We remain committed to implementing measures to protect rhinos throughout their range in Botswana. We are also in support of Recommendation F for the deletion of decisions 19.121 and 19.122 as they have been implemented. I thank you.
I call on Senegal.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like, first of all, to congratulate Botswana, Namibia, and others for measures taken to protect their rhinos. Like the United States, we would like to express our support for the recommendations made by the Secretariat in this document and support the Polish proposal as well. We also would like to say that we support the proposal made by Kenya with respect to little g, which has to do with reporting on rhino poaching. Thank you, Madam.
I call on Zimbabwe, and then the last party will be Niger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe is one of the range states for the rhinos, committed to the continued protection of this species. Zimbabwe has seen a growing population of rhinos in recent years, and we have also seen a significant decline in poaching, and we owe that to the effective implementation of our Rhino National Strategic Plan. We want to commend those parties that are also making similar efforts. In terms of the recommendations, Zimbabwe supports the recommendations that are in document 45, and we want to encourage parties as well as supporting partners that are complementing our rhino conservation efforts to keep on doing that. Thank you very much.
And then I will call finally on Niger.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I shall be brief. Niger supports Kenya's statement. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I turn to observer party organizations, and I will choose 2 if there are more than several. I have EIA USA.
Thank you, Chair. I'm making this intervention on behalf of EIA and 11 other observer organizations whose names have been provided to the Secretariat. We support the interventions from the EU, Kenya, the USA, Congo, Senegal, and Niger. We regret that the meeting of the CITES Rhinoceros Enforcement Task Force will be further delayed because some of the funding is now unavailable, and we encourage the Secretariat to explore options for hosting the meeting with a reduced budget. Rhino populations globally remain under intense pressure from poaching and illegal trade in rhino horn. In fact, just earlier this week, more than 20 horns were seized by Qatar. It is important that parties remain steadfast in their efforts to reduce demand for rhino horn and improve international enforcement cooperation to dismantle the organized crime networks driving the trade. We are concerned by developments in South Africa that indicate a push to develop a commercial domestic market for worked rhino horn products, which could undermine the decades of progress that parties have made to address poaching and illegal trade, and would conflict with the demand reduction provisions in Resolution Conf 9.14. We support the recommendations in Doc 45 and urge the Standing Committee to amend A through D in line with the proposal by Kenya so that the relevant parties are asked to support on implementation to the Secretariat for inclusion in its report on rhinos to COP20. We also encourage SC 78 to agree to a new recommendation requesting China, Mozambique, and Namibia, which did not support on implementation for inclusion in this report, to provide a report by SC 79. We do note and appreciate the information document supplied by Namibia and applaud Namibia on the establishment of the Environmental Crimes Court. Finally, we encourage the Standing Committee to propose the renewal of Decision 18.116 on demand reduction as suggested by Kenya. Thank you.
I will pause here and consult with the Secretariat. I think we've had much discussion of this item. So what I would like to propose is that the Standing Committee agrees to recommendation paragraph 70A, C, D, E, and F, and I've heard support for the new little paragraph G as suggested by Kenya. And then in B, I had a change from Poland, which I heard agreement and support on reporting on activities. So if that's acceptable, we would accept B with the amendment proposed by Poland. Is that a way forward? I see nods, agreements. Okay, then we will move forward. We will move on to agenda item 46, tortoises and freshwater turtles, decision 19.127, and it's introduced by the Secretariat.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam. This decision carries on decisions relating to tortoises and freshwater turtles in Madagascar. It provides general information on work that has been done and on information provided by Madagascar. The information that we have heard seems to indicate that Madagascar has done very little in recent years. The recommendations that we have for you are in paragraph 22 of the current document. The committee is invited to consider the new draft decisions on Madagascar in the annex. These drafts would be put to the COP, and we are suggesting the deletion of decisions 19.125, 126, and 127, and that would be recommended to the COP. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I give the floor to
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam. I would like to thank the Secretariat for having presented this report and for the recommendations made. That said, Madam, we would like to make some comments on these proposals at the next meeting of the Standing Committee and the COP. The Secretariat has said that we have reported in connection with the decision on tortoises. This population in Madagascar is under considerable stress. This has to do with habitat degradation, international trafficking especially, as well as poaching. This traffic has a very serious effect on this population, and international demand does have its role to play. And we would point out that international demand has a great role to play with respect to poaching and illegal trafficking. The government of Madagascar has a zero-tolerance policy with respect to trafficking now and is strengthening its efforts through monitoring and systems, as well as through ensuring that we can work through different agencies in order to actually prevent traffickers and arrest them. As of January 25, some 3,400 tortoises were seized, and at the beginning of this year, a network of traffickers was arrested. This was thanks to effective interagency coordination and involved the anti-corruption agency. Some 19 people were arrested. Foreigners were also arrested in Madagascar and Tanzania in connection with this. In looking at the international situation, there was an international network of traffickers that we managed to dismantle. We worked with other authorities in May 24. Over 1,000 tortoises and other animals were seized and repatriated to Madagascar. This thanks to our cooperation, in this instance, with the Thai authorities. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Thai authorities. Madam Chair, the fight against wildlife trafficking and the protection of Madagascar's tortoises and freshwater turtles requires international cooperation, and we would like to request international aid and cooperation with friendly nations, and particularly nations in Southeast Asia. We are determined to do everything we can to protect these emblematic species. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I open the floor to Standing Committee members for the discussion of the recommendations in paragraph 22. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the North America region, we would like to commend the important work being realized by Madagascar. While we generally support all the draft decisions, we consider that renewing them may not be the most effective way for the CITES Secretariat or Madagascar to address these compliance issues. The North America region believes that the Compliance Assistance Program, or CAP, might be a better alternative to assist Madagascar, and that Madagascar would be a good candidate, meeting most or all of the criteria to be eligible for CAP. We note in the document that Madagascar acknowledges several challenges in key compliance areas and appears committed to improving and supporting the conservation of its unique biodiversity. Additionally, we observe the document SC 78.23 encourages parties with prolonged compliance issues to express interest benefiting from the CAP. Therefore, the North America region would encourage Madagascar to express interest to benefit from the cap and would recommend the Standing Committee request the Secretariat to transfer the tasks outlined in the draft decisions to the Compliance Assistance Program, provided Madagascar is willing to participate and the Secretariat has the capacity to support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I turn to UK.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst the UK notes the information provided to the Secretariat by Madagascar, we are disappointed by apparent lack of any real progress in addressing the concerns and in ensuring the conservation of these 4 critically endangered species. The UK has supported projects through our Illegal Wildlife Trade Challenge Fund to improve the national capacity in Madagascar for cracking wildlife smuggling, particularly focusing on the critically endangered ploughshare tortoise. We urge Madagascar to consider the observations and conclusions of the Secretariat contained in this document carefully. We particularly hope that Madagascar can rapidly update and progress the implementation of its national conservation strategy for tortoises and freshwater turtles. We therefore fully support the Secretariat's recommendations.
I call on Poland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We wish to thank Madagascar for their efforts and this oral update, but also ask to provide expected information in a written form within 60 days from this meeting, as oral updates cannot replace written reporting requirements, as mentioned before. We regret the lack of progress and adequate reporting on this issue by Madagascar and express our enduring concern about the high levels of illegal trade and the critical conservation status of the species. The EU supports the new draft decisions proposed by the Secretariat. Noting, however, the challenges identified by Madagascar and the importance of support, we propose an additional decision directed towards parties affected by illegal trade with tortoises and freshwater turtles from Madagascar, and we urge parties to provide support to Madagascar. So the new draft decision would read as follows. The text was already provided to the Secretariat, but I will go through it. Directed to parties, 20.xx. Parties affected by illegal trade in tortoises and turtles from Madagascar are encouraged to A. Review their national legislation taking into consideration the provisions of paragraph 6C, D, F and G in Resolution Conf 11.3 Rev Cop 19 on compliance and enforcement, and where needed, revise such legislation to ensure that it adequately addresses illegal wildlife trade, including illegal trade in tortoises and turtles. B. Strengthen enforcement of existing relevant laws and regulations, including sensitize and raise awareness among its national law enforcement agencies regarding illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles. C. Engage with...
Excuse me, yep. Poland, can I ask you to wrap up? Although I think we want to hear this.
Yeah, I will try to, okay, because I was mindful of interpreters, but I'll try to speed it up a bit. So C, engage with and support Madagascar to facilitate information on intelligence exchange concerning the illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles. D, strengthen international collaboration and support international investigations combating illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles from Madagascar. E. Coordinate and collaborate with Madagascar regarding seized specimens originating from Madagascar, including agreeing on repatriation procedures when appropriate. And last, F. Promote public awareness and understanding of implications of illegal trade and take actions to decrease consumer demand in illegally sourced tortoises and freshwater turtles from Madagascar. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I open this floor to observer parties, and I have the Congo.
Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, We are delighted to be attending this SC meeting and undertake to continue to work to ensure the conservation of the species under threat and the fight against illegal trade in wildlife. We would particularly like to express our support for efforts being made to protect tortoises and freshwater turtles. Some turtles are under very serious threat by poachers and by threat to their habitat. We have a great biodiversity, and we are intent on implementing all international measures that will protect it. We want to ensure that all species under threat are protected by improved institutional legal frameworks, by full respect for the law against poaching and trafficking in protected species. We also want to strengthen our national measures against organized crime, this in coordination with international partners. We also want to have public awareness programs so that communities are aware of environmental issues and the need to protect fragile ecosystems. We also hope to have enhanced regional cooperation, particularly in our sub-region of Central Africa, and to work against transnational organized crime groups. We would like to refer to 19.125 and 127 with respect to Madagascar, and would encourage African countries to work together in order to ensure that we implement appropriate strategies to protect those tortoise and turtle species under threat. We would, in conclusion, ask for support for those countries that are engaged in this attempt to protect animals through monitoring, habitat enhancement, and programs to help local communities. We are firmly committed to CITES objectives and want to work together with everyone else to protect our shared human heritage. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have two more observer parties wishing to speak. I'll call on one of them. I'll call on the Central African Republic, and I ask you to really be brief and speak to the recommendations before us. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not be too long, but I would like to support the oral report that we have heard from Madagascar and to encourage them to provide a written report to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on observer organizations. I have Wildlife Conservation Society.
Thank you, Chair. And we appreciate the interventions of Poland, the UK, and the Republic of Congo, among others. Although we support adoption of the draft decisions and encourage their implementation, we want to stress that's not enough. Trafficking in freshwater turtles and tortoises, particularly those in Appendix 1, is rampant and reflects insufficient efforts to stem the pet and hobbyist trades driving this trafficking. Parties adopted decisions and a resolution. We'd like to see reporting on them, and we want to see action. We urge parties to take this issue more seriously. While we agree that range states need to do more, we support capacity building, but we also believe consumer states need to do far more. There are many recent reports of seizures and confiscations of illegal shipments, but sufficient efforts to prevent the illegal trade and change consumer behavior are lacking. We urge a more comprehensive effort to prevent and curb this trade, and we look forward to discussions at COP20 and our ongoing work with parties in country and in the field. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will consult with the Secretariat. Okay, I have a suggested way forward. I basically heard the Standing Committee would agree to the draft decisions 20AA, 20BB, 20CC, 20DD, and 20EE. I heard Poland suggest that Madagascar report to the next, submit a written report. I heard support from that. That could be added to the recommendation. And then the U.S. and North American region made a suggestion on CAP, having Madagascar be considered if they wish to for compliance assistance program. I think we take note of that suggestion, and if you could be sure the Secretariat, when you see the execs, when the lengthy report has your exact language of that. And then to the suggestion by Poland of a entirely new decision, given, trying to be fair here, given that Madagascar really has not seen it in writing, and it was read out in English but translated is not the same as actually seeing the text. I would suggest that perhaps a way forward on this is that Poland, these decisions, these recommendations will be going to the COP for consideration, that you bring that new draft decision there rather than here, to allow Madagascar time to review it, and perhaps you could work with them on it. It would be really helpful. So that's my proposed way forward, and I look to see if we can accept that from the Standing Committee members. I see nodding heads, and so we will conclude this one with the way forward. Thank you. I will move on to document 66 on great apes, and it's being introduced by the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. This document was prepared by the Secretariat in consultation with the Great Ape Survival Partnership, or GRASP, and the section on great apes of the IUCN Species Survival Commission Primate Specialist Group, with regards to paragraph 3 of Resolution Conf 13.4. It reports on several recent activities, including the outcomes of the recent GRASP Council meeting, and updates on several projects that are relevant to great ape conservation, as well as presenting an analysis of seizures of great ape specimens included in the CITES illegal trade database. The Standing Committee is invited to note the report and to consider the 2 recommendations in subparagraphs B and C of paragraph 18. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor to Standing Committee members. I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome the report and the summary it provides of the GRASP's 3rd Council meeting, which the UK was pleased to be present at. As a member of the GRASP Executive Committee, the UK wishes to support the recommendations in this document. We particularly encourage all parties to identify seized great ape specimens at species level and report those seizures. The UK has long been a supporter of the efforts undertaken by the range states to protect the endangered and critically endangered great apes, and we remain concerned at the continuing threat to the species through the illegal killing and trade in their parts and derivatives, amongst many other threats. We wish to encourage those relevant range states affected by illegal trade in great apes to address this issue as part of their implementation of the West African Wildlife Crime Strategy as appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call on Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We take note of the document and support its recommendations. In relation to recommendation B, we believe that the recommendations should also embrace a reference to encouragement and call for providing assistance in using identification methods in all range states and other parties affected by illegal trade, and exploring ways to secure funding to include new forensic tools to identify and trace great ape specimens to their source population. We also express deep concern over continuous decline in great apes populations. And in that context, we recall recommendations made at this SC77, namely addressing practical implementation and coordination of comprehensive enforcement controls to address illegal trade in great apes, development, implementation and improvement of in-situ great ape management programs, focusing at reducing main drivers of population declines, including illicit trade and habitat loss, which still seems to remain valid. Finally, we recommend re-establishment of the CITES Great Ape Enforcement Task Force, consisting of representatives of range, transit and consumer states affected by poaching and illicit trafficking in all great ape species, with primary goal to focus on better identification and eradication of illegal trade in great apes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I open up to observer parties, and I have Uganda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Uganda thanks the Secretariat for preparing this document. Uganda is a range state to the Great Apes and also a regional member to the executive of the GRASP Committee. Madam Chair, Uganda supports the recommendations contained in paragraph 18 of the document. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on the USA.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of the United States, we appreciate the document and support the recommendations contained therein. We also support the suggested addition from the delegation from Poland. Thank you, Chair.
And then I open up to observer organizations, and I have the Pan-African Alliance.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the comments and align with the comments made by UK, Poland, Uganda, and USA. This intervention is on behalf of Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, PASA, Animal Welfare Institute, Born Free, Pro Wildlife, and Animal Alliance of Canada. We support the SC recommendations and suggest that the SC review the present document with SC 77.42 submitted by Liberia at the last Standing Committee meeting regarding the establishment of a Great Ape Enforcement Task Force, which was reinforced by Poland just now. We note with concern the alarming number of live great apes traded internationally, with exports of approximately 500 live great apes from 2016 to 2023, according to CITES data. We urge more scrutiny on these transactions and when issuing permits. On December 22nd, Turkey confiscated a baby gorilla whose shipment originated in Nigeria and destined for Thailand. We appreciate the governments of Thailand, Nigeria, and Turkey for their continued investigations and applaud the Nigerian and Turkish CITES authorities for their ongoing discussion on repatriation. Our member stands ready to receive and care for the young gorilla. The confiscation in Turkey is not an isolated incident. Last year, Mozambique and Nigeria confiscated 2 baby gorillas. Both animals are rehabilitating at our member sanctuaries in West and Central Africa. Conserving great apes should not be on the shoulders of the range states alone. We urge that any strategies and efforts to reduce trafficking of and demand for live great apes should include transit and destination countries implicated in the illegal trade. Thank you, Chair.
I have UNEP, and then I'll close discussion.
Thank you, Chair. UNEP supports the recommendations contained in document 66 and thanks the Secretariat for preparing this document. And as Secretariat of GRASP, invites CITES to consider contributing to the GRASP ape seizure database and is ready to support the efforts of the parties and of the decisions adopted by this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will take a minute to consult and get back to you. All right, this is what I would like to propose to the Standing Committee members for their consideration, that essentially the Standing Committee notes the Secretariat's report in document SC 78, document 66, and agrees to the recommendations in paragraph B as amended by Poland, but I would ask Poland to give the written text to the Secretariat to capture it, and C in paragraph 18. As to the proposal on the reestablishment of the Great Ape Task Force, I think this is a bit more than we could discuss here. I would encourage that decision, a party, to bring that decision to the COP when this document is discussed. And that's my summary of the recommendations. Is that a way forward? I'm seeing nodding heads, and so I will accept this one, close this one with that in mind. And we can note, the record will note the suggestion of the reestablishment of the task force. And we have 15 minutes. Maybe we can get through this one. Agenda item 37, review of resolution Conf 11.3, Rev Cop 19 on compliance and enforcement, decision 19.66. And I turn to the working group chair, New Zealand, to present this document.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing this document on behalf of Kenya and New Zealand as co-chairs of the working group. The mandate for this working group, Decision 19.66, required it to consider whether a range of identified topics are gaps to be addressed in the resolution, to identify further gaps, and to recommend amendments to Resolution Conf 11.3 to the Standing Committee. On Decision 19.66A, concerning the role of professional bodies and whether they should be held to higher standards with regard to enforcement actions, there was not strong enough support for from the working group members to recommend amendments to the resolution that would direct parties to address the issue of professional bodies. However, the working group considered there were merits in raising awareness of the issue, encouraging parties to actively consider the relevance of the issue in their own domestic context when drafting or reviewing national legislation, and encouraging professional bodies to provide training to members. The working group recommends the inclusion of a preambular statement and recommendations for action under paragraph 15 of the resolution Conf 11.3, and these are set out in the annex to the document. On 19.66F, concerning whether to update timeframes for providing information in response to requests for information from the Secretariat on a potential compliance matter, the working group acknowledged both the importance of parties having sufficient time to respond to requests for information from the Secretariat on compliance matters, and parties who may require additional time to respond to requests to engage with the Secretariat as soon as it becomes apparent that more time may be required for the necessary information to be prepared and submitted. On this matter, the working group recommends retaining the overall 6-month time frame in paragraph 22B of the resolution, but requiring the justification for a lack of response at 3 months, with the Secretariat reminding the party to provide the response within the next 3 months. Parties would still therefore have the 6 months to respond, with the emphasis on a justification for any delay at 3 months and providing the information within the 6 months time frame as set out in proposed amendments in the annex to this document. Recommendation 35G invites the Standing Committee to submit these proposed amendments to the resolution as set out in the annex for consideration by COP20. On 1966 B, C, D and E concerning marine species, stocks and stockpiles, One Health and electronic systems, the working group agreed that any consideration of amendments to the resolution on these matters could not take place until ongoing discussions and guidance being developed in other CITES working groups on these topics was complete. The working group did not agree whether or not 19.66 had been implemented and can be deleted, or whether a new mandate is required for the working group to enable the consideration of these particular matters, marine species, stocks and stockpiles, One Health and electronic systems, following COP20. Recommendation 35F invites the Standing Committee to consider this matter. The working group did not identify any further matters to be addressed in the resolution, and the Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendations in paragraph 35. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor to Standing Committee members. I have the DRC.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are speaking on behalf of Central Africa. We congratulate Kenya and New Zealand for having drawn up this document and the work of the working group on the revision of the review of Resolution 11.3. RevCop 19, and we take note of the recommendations. The Central African Group also encourages strongly that parties review during the drawing up of the revision of their national legislation, that they look at the role of the professional authorities linked to CITES in terms of combating fraud, and we encourage parties to raise awareness in their authorities in each of their countries to ensure that they work and align with the convention. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome the proposals in the document, but we have some minor amendments to propose to two of the additions in Resolution Conf 11.3 in the annex. The UK considers that anyone trading in wildlife, whether a professional body or not, should be held to the relevant standards with regards to violations and compliance. We do not think different standards for different bodies or individuals should be formalised in Resolution Conf 11.3 as proposed. Where parties wish to take a different approach, it is within their gift to include relevant provisions in their national legislation in line with the requirements of the Convention, without the need for this to be specifically addressed in Resolution Conf 11.3. We therefore suggest the following drafting amendments to the proposed preambular paragraph referenced in paragraph 17 of this document. In the preamble, we'd like to reframe the reference to members having a higher level of knowledge. We suggest that this is amended to aware that a wide range of professional bodies are closely associated with the implementation of CITES, and delete and their members possess the knowledge and expertise to better, and replace that with and encourage them to promote an understanding of the importance of compliance with the Convention amongst their members. For example, commercial traders, brokers, transporters, trade groups, veterinarians, zoological and aquarium facilities, and so on.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Just one other minor change. In addition, in the additional paragraph 10E of the resolution, we suggest adding in the word consider when referencing the development codes of conduct, so that the third line of the addition would read, and where appropriate, to consider developing codes of conduct relating to trade in and management of CITES listed species. Thank you.
Thank you. I now open it up to observer parties. I have Mexico.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mexico supports recommendations A, B, C, and F of the document. However, in relation to recommendation D, Mexico considers that the subjects referred to as new gaps are not necessarily matters of compliance and enforcement. And so we consider that in line with recommendation E, that decision 19.66 has been implemented and can be deleted. I would also like to take this opportunity to invite parties to see information document 19 and see the side event we will be holding with Wild Tech this afternoon at midday, to introduce a new tool for the identification of species through DNA samples. Everyone is cordially invited. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To be brief, we can agree with the amendments with UK and the comments by Mexico on recommendation E. On 1966. Thank you.
Thank you. China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China believes that it is difficult to define what constitutes a professional body in commonly accepted practical or legal terms. As an example, it is not clear that those non-governmental organizations who participate in CITES involved should be included in the category because there is significant variation among the parties as how to develop and implement national legislation. China believes that it exceeds the remit of CITES to impose a reference to the term professional bodies. China, therefore, does not support the recommendations made in paragraph 35B. Further, although we understand that the 6-month time frame to respond on compliance measures would not change, China believes that adding the requirement for a justification for a delay after 3 months would increase pressure on the parties instead of offering practical support, and is therefore counterproductive. Thus, China also cannot support the recommendations in 35C. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And then lastly, now I'm seeing other parties wishing to speak. I will allow these two more on my screen. I will allow Peru, followed then by the Russian Federation, and I will close it to observer parties. So Peru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to support the amendments that were proposed by the United Kingdom, and we also align ourselves with the comments that we've heard from China. Thank you.
I will call on the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam. We also see the merits in the comments provided by both the UK and China. And with regard to professional bodies, we wanted to note that although there are examples of these bodies in the text, nevertheless, perhaps more work needs to be done on defining at least the scope of such professional bodies on the international level, so that it would be more clear how to apply this within national contexts, which are, of course, different. Thank you.
I would like to ask the interpreters for an additional 5 minutes in the hopes that perhaps I can wrap it up.
Yes, Chair, of course.
Thank you. I will open up to one observer organization? Not seeing any requested, I will consult with the Secretariat. Oh, it's... So the Standing Committee can agree to the recommendations A, B, C, and D. And F, that decision 19.66 has been implemented and can be proposed for deletion. And then G would now read, Standing Committee agrees to submit the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 11.3 Rev Cop 19 with the proposed amendments by the UK and the observation and conclusions of the working group for consideration at the 20th Conference of the Parties, COP 20. And then we would add an H that we note the comments, the Standing Committee notes the comments made by China and the Russian Federation. Is that a way forward? I see some nodding heads. Yes, we can move forward then with that conclusion. Thank you. Turn to the Secretariat now for housekeeping, and then there is one change to the agenda, so pay attention.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to announce some changes to the working program. Firstly, this afternoon, we will start with document 68.1 and 68.2 on Saiga antelope, Saiga SPP. This will be taken up first thing in the afternoon today at 2 p.m. Secondly, document 44.1 and 44.2 on Jaguar, which had been announced by the chair to be postponed. This will be taken up first thing tomorrow morning. So we will start with 68.1, 68.2 on Saiga, and then we'll go back to what is in the agenda. Also at 2 p.m., we may announce some further changes to the working program, depending on the time that's remaining for this afternoon. Thank you.